Hello, BookTube. I wanted to give you a quick update on the Belgariadpocalypse. This is a long read-along that I'm doing with Becky of the Bookish Bryants and a bunch of other people where we are reading or rereading David Eddings' series, The Belgariad, which was really popular, back when it started to come out, and which originated from Eddings almost literally walking around a retail bookstore, seeing The Lord of the Rings and noticing how popular it was and saying, I can do that. It's the story of an age-old contest between a scarred, disfigured god and an order of powerful wizards who are intent on keeping that scarred god from the MacGuffin he most desires. And the order of those wizards needs occasionally new blood. It needs to be replenished. And the wizards themselves are immortal. Belgareth and Polgara are immortal. So they've been around for thousands of years. And have presumably shepherded a number of candidates into their order. And in the first book, we get the local boy in a small town storyline that was old as dirt, even when Eddings decided to just unapologetically haul it out of mothballs and use it again, and it is still sometimes used. The Luke Skywalker template. The character he's a teenager. He's noble. He's clearly being watched by supernatural powers. Doesn't seem to make much of it. Nobody else seems to notice that. He thinks that he will just live the whole of his life in his quiet little town, and none of it's going to happen. It's a very hackneyed storyline. We all know that. We know that his Aunt Paul, it takes virtually no time at all to figure out that she is in fact the sorceress Polgara. It takes almost no time to figure out that Mr. Wolf, the mysterious old man who visits the town from time to time and seems to know Aunt Paul really well, is Belgareth the sorcerer. And they have a quest of their own. Belgareth does, but it's intimately connected with whether or not the main character, Garion, is some sort of chosen one, whether or not the farmer is some sort of chosen one. Very, very familiar stuff. I was never a big fan of the Belgariad. I read it because all of my customers were reading it. I thought, this is reheated Tolkien, and it's not reheated very hot. It's just room temperature reheated Tolkien. So I was intrigued by Becky's idea to reread the whole thing. And I reread the first book in the series and was favorably impressed. It is still reheated Tolkien, almost entirely. Imagine, for the first book, imagine the scenes at the Prancing Pony when there's Strider, but we don't yet know that he's Aragorn, where there's this mysterious stranger who's obviously in disguise and has a huge backstory to him, but we don't know if he's trustworthy or not, and we don't know what that story is. That is very good and very interesting in Fellowship of the Ring for 2 chapters. Imagine that stretched out over 22 chapters. And you start to get a sense of the ways in which the first book in the series is bad. There are ways in which it's really good, though, and those are the ways that I noticed when I was rereading it. I was noticing that you just can't stop. It's just very smoothly affecting storytelling. It's never boring. No matter how hackneyed it is, it's never boring. So, I'm in it for the long haul with the Belgariad. I raced through the first book, but I'm reading the second book now. This is Queen of Sorcery. There's our main character. As you can see, he has huge amounts of throbbing potential. I am reading this, and I've got the ebook, and I'm reading it at a leisurely pace for me, and that's a little bit difficult, and that's a feather in David Eddings' cap. It's difficult to read this at a leisurely pace. This is very popcorny literature. It really wants to be read in huge gulps, huge heaping fistfuls. And in Queen of Sorcery, we learn a lot more about the main character. We learn a lot more. I would argue that all of the exposition that we should have gotten in the first book is just these characters going from one Motel 6 to another. It's just an endless catalog of that with nothing to grab onto. The first book in the series would be an inconceivable reading experience if the Lord of the Rings did not exist. Even if you haven't read Lord of the Rings before you read this book, it still created the whole air of epic fantasy. You're still breathing that air, and you've been breathing it since you were old enough to read. Otherwise, the first book would make no sense at all. You'd be 50 pages in and saying, you can't possibly be expecting me to keep reading this. It gets by because it is obviously prologue. And the story to which it is a prologue starts to unfold in earnest in Queen of Sorcery. So I wanted to give you just a very quick update that I am enjoying this. Despite everything. The original American paperback covers were not nearly as interesting as mine, so maybe that might have something to do with it. But no, I think it's Eddings' storytelling. There's a part of me that hesitates to say that, hesitates to use that term. Because whatever's going on here, I hate to use storytelling if I'm going to say that the author of Beowulf is also using storytelling. It's a very simplified version of what we mean by storytelling, but it is effective. Absolutely, it is effective. So I just wanted to give you a quick update that Queen of Sorcery is going like gangbusters. It certainly has a lot more meat on its bones than, so to speak, no pun intended. It certainly has a lot more meat on its bones than the first book did, mainly because finally we are getting something about the main character. He's a total cipher in the first book. He is a young adult man. He's not mistaken for a little boy by anybody that the characters meet on the road, but the other characters that he's traveling with, especially Aunt Paul, are constantly telling him that he's an ignoramus child, that it's not time now for him to know the slightest thing. There were times during the book where during that first book, where I honestly thought that the main character was going to say, "What's for supper?" and Aunt Paul was going to say, "It's not yet time for you to know." It gets very annoying, and a lot less of that is true in Queen of Sorcery. So I'm going to be reading that, and then I will be moving on to the third book, Magician's Gambit. Which, if I remember correctly, is the book where our main character really starts to come into his own in terms of his supernatural destiny. But I could be wrong about that. It's been a while since I read these, and I was largely resistance reading them the first time. So just a quick update. I'll leave a link to all of the requisite channels down below so you can catch yourself up. And I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.